Back in June 2018, I uploaded a video review of the Tascam 202 Mark VII cassette deck, which is one of the few new cassette decks available on the market today. And initially, a lot of people were skeptical of just how much demand there would be for a new cassette deck, especially at the list price of $499. But now, that video review of the Tascam cassette deck has over 821,000 views on it. So evidently there is still quite a bit of interest in new cassette decks. And shortly after I made that video, TEAC, which is the consumer division of Tascam, introduced a very similar version of that cassette deck, the W1200, which is basically the same thing except for some minor differences in features. So evidently there was enough demand for them to introduce another new model of cassette deck on the consumer market. So with all that in mind, I thought I'd take a look at the other model of cassette deck available from TEAC and Tascam, the one that is integrated with a CD player and also a USB port for playing and recording MP3 files. This is the Tascam professional version, the CD A580. TEAC sells a consumer grade version of this with some minor differences in features. The AD850, there's only a few minor differences between the TEAC and Tascam versions, which I'll mention as I go along, so this video will apply to both of them. I did not pay full price for this one because I got it used on eBay at a significant discount because it was listed as for parts or not working. The seller said they tested the CD player and it works fine, but they did not test the cassette deck. That's why they listed it as is, potentially not working. I figured there was a good chance they simply did not have a cassette tape to test it with, so I took a gamble and I bought it, and luckily for me everything works fine, including the cassette deck. I did get it with the remote control and the manual, and the Tascam version comes with these detachable rack mount ears, which the TEAC version does not. Another difference is that the Tascam version, because it's designed to be rack mounted, has rather short rubber feet on the bottom, while the TEAC version has taller and more decorative feet, similar to what you would see on typical hi-fi components. Also, the TEAC version comes with a pair of RCA audio cables, while the Tascam version does not. I guess they figure this is designed for professional use, and professionals always have a bunch of audio cables lying around, so they don't need Tascam to provide any with it. And in case you're wondering what potential professional uses there might be for a cassette deck in year 2020, well, I have a copy here of Tascam's System Design Guide for Audio Installation, the 2020 version, and it goes through all different uses for professional audio installations. And the first one that mentions the cassette deck is AV System for Audiovisual Classrooms. They show their 202 Mark VII cassette deck there, but obviously this would serve the same purpose. They even point out cassette tape playback as one of the main features of this kind of system. Likewise, sound system for auditoriums and gymnasiums, also including their cassette deck. Sound system for small banquet halls, lectures, and conferences. Again, their cassette deck is featured. And even their recommended background music system for restaurants includes a cassette deck. I can also imagine radio stations, libraries, churches, senior citizen centers, dance studios, all sorts of applications for a CD player and a cassette deck, even in the year 2020.
I believe in the world that they told me existed on the vinyl and the tapes are from the CD players.
But one application the TEAC version of this would be better suited to is karaoke, because whereas the Tascam version has a headphone output here, the TEAC version has a microphone input with an adjustable level control and also an adjustable echo control for getting that reverb effect on your voice. So if you're into karaoke, look for the TEAC AD850 version of this. And those are actually the only differences I've been able to spot between the Tascam and TEAC versions of this. So from this point forward, the review will apply equally to both of them. The back panel is very simple, just a power cord, which is permanently attached, and RCA line level inputs and outputs. It is not worldwide voltage, but Tascam does sell a 230 volt version for the parts of the world that use that voltage range, as well as this 120 volt American version. Now I'll turn it on. You just heard the cassette tape mechanism over there. make a couple clunking sounds as it initializes itself. And you can actually choose whether it powers up in CD mode, tape mode, or USB mode with this switch here. And there's also a switch where it can automatically start playing or recording as soon as power is applied. Although the recording feature only applies to the tape, not the USB. So obviously this is the CD tray, open close button. Takes a little bit to open up, but you can just push it closed. And the main CD player controls stop, play, pause, skip and search, forward and reverse. You do get a repeat function to repeat one track or the entire CD, which is also applicable for USB MP3 playback. Down here is the USB port for playing and recording MP3 files. Basic controls for this are stop, play, pause, skip and search, reverse and forward, and you can move through the different folders of a USB drive. And here's the button for recording to MP3 files on the USB drive, but I'll talk more about the USB playback and recording later. You also get adjustable recording level control for both MP3 recording and cassette tape recording, and it's actually even adjustable on the remote control with these push buttons. And you do get an audio level meter on the display for both playback and recording of all modes, including CDs and MP3s, which is a nice touch. So it's not just for cassette tapes, it works in everything. Over on the cassette tape side of things, you get your single cassette deck with a soft eject door, and your basic controls: play, pause, stop, rewind, fast forward. You get this button to start recording. Adjustable pitch control for cassette playback only. It does not affect the CD player or MP3 player, unfortunately. It's adjustable plus or minus 10% with a center detent position at the normal speed. But before I get into the cassette deck, let's cover the CD player. It's pretty much your standard run-of-the-mill CD player, although it does play MP3 encoded CDs. And it does actually have something in common with an audiophile CD player that costs over $1,000, which we'll see once I open this thing up. It does take a couple seconds to open the tray after you push the button. But once you pop in your CD and hit play, it works pretty well. I just have it playing through a small pair of test speakers right now, but I have tested this and it has very flat frequency response, and it also does properly support CDs recorded with pre-emphasis, which are not very common, but if you have any of those, mostly from the early to mid 1980s, they will play properly on this. Just one thing I don't really care for is the fast forwarding is rather choppy. But that seems to be common with newer CD players. And it does have programming capability, although you need to use the remote to do that. You cannot program it from the front panel. So that's about it for the CD player. I'm sure everyone watching this knows what a standard CD player works like and sounds like, so I don't really need to go in any more depth about that. But I'll switch over to the USB, and I have my test USB drive with some audio files on it. Plug it in, it automatically says reading. It does take a couple seconds to go through the files and index them. You can see it found one folder with 7 files in it. Now it's playing and it shows the file name, and it does scroll, and you can see the audio level meter functioning. With the remote I can change it to show the title, the artist, the album, although this MP3 file does not have an album indicated, or the file name. The manual says it supports sampling frequencies of 16 to 48 kilohertz, although that is incorrect because right now I have a 11.025 kilohertz MP3 file and it plays fine. So it supports more sampling rates than the manual specifies. And although this only recognizes files with an MP3 extension, Since all ISO standard MP3 players are supposed to be backwards compatible with MPEG Layer 2 and MPEG Layer 1, also known as MP2 and MP1, I tried taking MP2 and MP1 files and renaming them to MP3, and they work fine as well. This is an MP1, an MPEG Layer 1 file playing right now. And the funny thing is, the seeking actually is better than on MP3 files. Listen to this. It seeks a lot faster than MP3 files. And this is an MP2 file, which I renamed to MP3. You can see it should show up on the display, the title and the artist and everything. So that part works. Let's try seeking. Yeah, MP2 seeks about as well as MP3s do, but for some reason seeking works a lot better on MP1 files. And like I said, this can record to USB from any of the other sources, the CD player, the line input, or the cassette player. So let me just do a quick test of that, putting in this tape, and record to USB. Select source, I'll select tape. Bitrate 128K. I don't think you get any control over that. That's the big downside of this. You cannot change the bitrate from 128. That's what it's set to. 20 years ago that was fine, but today they really should try to increase that. Nonetheless, I'm going to try recording. You can see the rec indicator flashing, but I believe I have to hit it again, and now it's actually starting to record. You can see the timer counting up. So I'll just record a short segment here to MP3. Okay, record ending. And it automatically switches back to USB. So there's the new file we recorded. It creates its own folder for the MP3 recordings it makes. So that's why it shows folder 2, file 1. And I'll play that now, and I'll give you a direct hookup of what it sounds like. And you do get adjustable recording level when recording to MP3s. I don't know if these numbers are calibrated in decibels, but it goes from -20, which is the minimum, to 0, which is the default, and up to +12. So you get quite a range of recording levels. Next is the line input, and the nice thing is that you can switch to it at any time and hear what's coming through it, not just when you're recording to tape like a standard cassette deck. So that makes it very convenient for someone who has a turntable and maybe just has it connected to a pair of powered speakers. With this, you could add a CD player and cassette deck to your system without needing to change anything else. You could plug your turntable's preamp output into the line input of this and then just switch to it whenever you want to play records, and then switch to the CD player or the cassette deck whenever you want to use those. So I have my turntable's preamp output connected to the line input, and I can play my records through it. And of course you can record this to the MP3 just like from cassette. So let me do a short sample of that. So once again, I'll give you a sample of how this sounds, the recording it made from the turntable to an MP3 file on the USB drive. And if you want to split tracks while recording to USB, you just hit the recording button again and it says increment. Although it's not completely gapless, there will be a small gap between the end of the first track and the beginning of the next track of the MP3 files it records. But if you're recording to USB from a CD, it does automatically split the tracks according to how they are laid out on the CD. So you don't need to do it manually. The level meter actually changes its scale depending on which mode you're in. In CD or USB mode, it goes from -30 to 0 dB. And when you're recording an MP3 file, if you exceed 0 dB full scale, the over indicator will light up to indicate that you have exceeded the maximum recording level. Whereas in tape mode, it goes from -30 to +5 dB, because with analog tape, 0 dB is just a reference point. It's not an absolute maximum recording level like it is with digital. So it's not uncommon for tape recordings to exceed 0 dB by quite a bit. Now for the part you probably all came here to see, the cassette deck. This actually uses the same mechanism as the Tascam 202 Mark VII and TEAC W1200. The only difference is it does not have dynamic noise reduction, which was supposed to be a substitute for Dolby noise reduction, which is no longer available. Dolby has no longer licensed that to any manufacturers since 2014, so that's why new cassette decks manufactured today no longer feature Dolby noise reduction. But for any given number of people who would be upset by the lack of Dolby noise reduction, there always seems to be an equal number of people who say they hate Dolby noise reduction and they never used it even on decks that did have it. So make of that what you will. For most people these days, just being able to play and record cassettes at all is the main advantage of this, even if it lacks some of the features that decks from 20 or 30 years ago used to have. And as you might have guessed, this does use a Tanishin mechanism, but don't confuse it with the ones you find in cheap little mono boomboxes and portable cassette recorders these days, because it really has very little in common with those. This is pretty much the best cassette deck mechanism that's possible to manufacture in the year 2020. It is a solenoid driven mechanism with soft touch full logic controls, so it doesn't use those clunky mechanical push buttons like the cheaper cassette decks. That is a stereo AC bias record and play head, and there is the AC bias electromagnetic erase head, so it's not a permanent magnet like the cheaper decks use. It is an electromagnetic erase head, and it is not auto reverse, but it is full auto stop, so if you're fast forwarding or rewinding, it will stop when it gets to the end of the tape, not just in play or record modes. So I have a tape here which is almost near the beginning. I'll put it in and hit rewind, and you'll see it will automatically stop when it reaches the end. You can also see the digital tape counter, which you can reset here. I can actually show you this in operation if I hold down the sensor, which makes it think a tape is inserted. Here's play. See, it smoothly raises up the play head and engages the pinch roller to the capstan and starts turning the take-up reel. And here's what happens when it reaches the end of the tape. Automatically stops. Here is fast forward. Likewise, if I stop the tape, it automatically stops. And this can play all four types of cassette tapes. Standard Type 1 normal bias tape, Type 2 chrome or chrome equivalent cobalt tape, Type 3 ferrochrome tape, and Type 4 metal tape. But if you want to record, you can only use standard Type 1 normal bias tape or Type 2 chrome or chrome equivalent tape. I suppose you could also use Type 3 ferrochrome tape, because these were designed to be mostly compatible with normal Type 1 cassette decks, although hardly anybody ever uses these anymore, so probably you'll never even see one of these. But you cannot record onto Type 4 metal tape because the head they use in this does not supply a high enough bias level to record onto metal tape. But many people never even used metal tape due to its high cost, and these have not even been manufactured in quite a long time. So again, you probably won't see too many of these, so for most people it's not something to worry about. And actually there is another type of tape that this can both play and record which I forgot to mention. It's a Type 2 metal tape, but these are really quite rare, and in fact most people don't even know these things exist. Cassette Comeback did a video about these on his channel if you want to look it up and see what is all about these. But again, not too common. You probably won't find any of these, but if you do happen to find a metal Type 2 instead of a metal Type 4 tape, you can record onto this as well as play it. Recording to a cassette tape is very simple. You just select your audio source, whether it's the CD, the USB, or the line input, and start it playing. Put in a blank tape and hit tape record. Now it's not actually recording it, it's in recording pause mode, so you can adjust your level. The manual suggests not going above 0 dB on the meter when recording the tape, but I found I can go all the way up to plus 5 dB without any audible distortion, even on ordinary Type 1 tape. So once you get your recording levels set up correctly, just hit the record button again, and now it's actually recording the tape, and you can see the tape counter incrementing there. And once you're done recording, just hit stop. It automatically switches to tape mode, so you can immediately go back and play what you recorded. And I'll give you a direct hookup sample of what I just recorded onto tape from CD. And here's a recording I made from CD onto TDK SA high bias Type 2 tape. And if you're recording from CD to tape and you have the CD paused, as soon as you hit the recording button, it'll unpause the CD and begin playing it. And if you pause the recording, it'll also pause the CD. If you hold down the source button while turning it on, it goes into a test mode where first it displays the firmware revision number. Then it goes into a display segment test where it illuminates all the indicators on the display. And if you push the source button again, it goes into a button test mode where any button you press will show what it is on the display to verify that the button is working. So you can see all the buttons, and the knob is showing what it does on the display. And to get out of this test mode, you just turn it off and then turn it on normally. The inside has a very simple and clear layout with the power transformer, the CD mechanism, the main circuit board, and the cassette mechanism. And if you've seen my review of the Tascam 202 Mark 7 cassette deck, this should be a familiar sight because it's the same exact cassette mechanism as used in that deck. Its main advantages are simplicity and ease of maintenance. Fewer parts means fewer things to go wrong, and it's very easy to replace the belts on this. You just remove 2 screws and then the motor bracket comes off, which gives you easy access to the belts. And there are 3 sensors on top of the tape mechanism. This one indicates whether or not you have inserted a cassette tape. This one indicates whether or not the recording tab is present. And this one indicates whether it's a high bias tape or a normal bias tape. It lines up with the special hole that high bias and metal tapes have to indicate the type of bias and equalization they should use. And on the main circuit board there are trim pots for adjusting the recording bias, the recording level, and the playback level of the cassette deck for the left and right channels. If I put in my audio alignment test tape, which has a 1 kHz tone on it, and play it with the pitch control in the center detent position, is coming in around 1008 Hertz, which is within 1% accuracy, so that's pretty good. And my wound flutter test tape is coming in at around 0.09 to 0.10% WRMS, which is much better than this unit's rated specification of 0.25% WRMS. And the level meter is calibrated properly according to the IEC standard, because if I put in my test tape, which has a 0 dB tone on it, and hit play, it shows exactly 0 dB on the meter. And take a look at the model number on the CD player mechanism. JTL101Y. This is actually the same CD player mechanism used in the Marantz ND8006 CD and digital media player, which sells for $1,200 and which audiophile magazines raved about its quality and accuracy. So either this is a really good CD player mechanism, or that review of the $1,200 Marantz, which uses it, was full of shit.
But if you say that you've got something better to do, I'll take the chance, change my plans, leave it all up to you. What's it gonna be? Guess I'll wait and see. Oh baby, just to give me a clue. Well, I trust you if you say that you've got something better to do.
So that's my review of the Tascam CD-A580, which also applies to the TEAC AD850. It's by far not the best CD player, cassette deck, or MP3 recorder ever made, but its main advantage is giving you the convenience of having all three of those functions built into one unit, plus the assurance of buying a new item with a full manufacturer warranty and support, rather than taking a gamble on a 30-year-old piece of equipment which may need maintenance or repair.
There is a special feeling in Oldsmobile. There is a special feeling in Oldsmobile.